Okay, hello, I'm Katie Talbot, and I'm going to talk to you about two propositions on the ballot related to property taxes. The first is Proposition 15, which is a tax on commercial and industrial properties. The way it is now, Prop 13 from 1978 governs taxes on residential, commercial, and industrial properties, and they're all treated the same way for tax purposes. Proposition 13 sets the taxation rate at 1% of the assessed value for each property. The assessed value is the purchase price of the property, the original purchase price, and then it increases at most 2% per year. This means that the assessed value effectively doubles every 35 years. Interestingly, market values are increasing much faster at 8 to 9% per year for the last 20 to 30 years. This means that market values are increasing about 4 times faster than assessed values. The last introductory point here is that sale of a property resets the assessed value of the property to the new purchase price. So what Proposition 15 does, this is called the split roll initiative. It splits the property tax rolls into residential on one side of the roll and commercial and industrial properties on the other side of the tax rolls. This initiative proposes to treat the two sides of the roll differently. Residential properties, including apartment buildings and ag land, would follow the same Prop 13 property tax rules as now. Commercial and industrial properties would be treated differently. They would be reassessed every 3 years and taxed based on their fair market value rather than their original purchase price. There's an exemption for commercial properties worth less than $3 million, and they would be treated under Prop 13 as they are currently. The fiscal impact of this initiative is that it should raise between $6.5 and $11.5 billion per year. And that would go 60% to local governments and 40% to schools, which would be paid to districts on a per pupil basis. Next slide, please. Supporters say that Prop 13 was passed to protect homeowners. Businesses are not paying their fair share. They use a loophole to avoid reassessment when they sell their properties, resulting in a lower property tax bill for businesses. Proponents of this measure say that that's why homeowners are paying a rising percentage of the property tax bills in the state. Opponents say that this large increase will make it harder for businesses in California to function and will cause some companies to leave California. In addition, the cost from commercial and property taxes will be passed on to small business. So I'm doing a time check here, and it has been 19 minutes exactly since we started. So that's not bad.
We're doing well.
Okay, so I will continue with Prop 19, property tax transfer. So could I have the next slide, please? And it's cut off at the top. Oh no, that's just me. So Prop 19, property tax transfer. The way it is now, in the 1980s and the 1990s, two propositions were passed that allowed children to inherit grandparents' or parents' primary residences. And it's important to understand that it's the grandparents' or the parents' primary residence that gets inherited. And there's no reassessment in that situation. A second proposition, Prop 90 in 1988, allowed seniors over 55, disabled homeowners, and disaster victims to transfer their assessed values to a lower price replacement home in 10 participating counties in California one time. The idea of this was to protect disaster victims, disabled Californians, and older adults, and allow older adults to downsize their houses, freeing up properties for resale without a property tax penalty for the people who move. One more piece of history. In 2018, 2 years ago, we voted on Prop 5. And this proposition sought to expand the assessed value transfer privilege to anywhere in the state. This was rejected by 60% of voters. So what will this proposition do? Proposition 19 does 4 things. It allows transfer of assessed value to a replacement home anywhere in the state 3 times, up to 3 times. It allows family farms and homes to be inherited with no reassessment as long as they're used as primary residences. Otherwise, they get reassessed. In addition, it reassesses inherited properties to market value if the market value exceeds the assessed value by $1 million or more. And the last thing it does, the 4th thing this proposition wants to do, is to deposit that increased revenue to the state into a newly created California Fire Response Fund. Fiscal impacts are 10 million to 100 million in new revenue, and tens of millions of fees related to home sales. So now I'm ready for the next slide. The supporters say that this protects family farms, and they also say that it closes a loophole and this proposition prevents people from renting out their inherited properties with subsidized low property tax rates from their parents or grandparents. Proponents also say that this provides much needed stable funding source of hundreds of millions of dollars for wildfire mitigation and response. And opponents say this is a huge tax increase for special interests disguised as a property tax reform. We just voted down added inheritance benefits and added portability benefits very recently. And so why are we voting on this again? And that is the end of my presentation. Any questions?
And Katie, we do have a question again from Mary Jo, who's asking, can anyone avoid reassessment or only certain categories of people?
Only certain categories. So seniors, disaster victims, and disabled, but the categories are multiplying. The 3 that I mentioned, disabled Californians can also avoid reassessment. Also, you can avoid reassessment if you allow your property to be inherited by a child or a grandchild under certain circumstances on the grandchildren.
Thank you, Katie.